rule in investment is don't lose. And the second rule in investment is don't forget the first rule, and that's all the rules there are. I mean, if you buy things for far below what they're worth, and you buy a group of them, you basically don't lose money.
Warren, what do you consider the most important quality for an investment manager?
It's a temperamental quality, not an intellectual quality. You don't need tons of IQ in this business. I mean, you have to have enough IQ to get from here to downtown Omaha, but you do not have to be able to play three-dimensional chess or be in the top leagues in terms of bridge playing or something of the sort. You need a stable personality. You need a temperament that neither derives great pleasure from being with the crowd or against the crowd, because this is not a business where you take polls. It's a business where you think. And Ben Graham would say that you're not right or wrong because 1,000 people agree with you. And you're not right or wrong because 1,000 people disagree with you. You're right because your facts and your reasoning are right.
Warren, what do you do that's different than 90% of the money managers who are in the market?
Certainly most of the professional investors focus on what the stock is likely to do in the next year or two. And they have all kinds of arcane methods of approaching that, but they do not really think of themselves as owning a piece of a business. The real test of whether you're investing from a value standpoint or not is whether you care whether the stock market is open tomorrow. If you're making a good investment in a security, it shouldn't bother you if they close down the stock market for 5 years. All the ticker tells me is the price. Yeah. And I can look at the price occasionally to see whether the price is outlandishly cheap or outlandishly high, but prices don't tell me anything about a business. Business figures themselves tell me something about a business, but the price of a stock doesn't tell me anything about a business. I would rather value a stock or a business first and not even know the price, so that I'm not influenced by the price in establishing my valuation, and then look at the price later to see whether it's way out of line with what my value is.
So Buffett chose to stay in this world, Omaha, Nebraska, where corn grows just minutes from downtown. Now, Omaha is a nice town, but nobody claims it's a world financial center. Here, the only thundering herd is actually on 4 feet. Don't you find Omaha a little bit off the beaten track for the investment world?
Well, believe it or not, we get mail here, and we get periodicals, and we get all the facts needed to make decisions. And unlike Wall Street, you'll notice we don't have 50 people coming up and whispering in our ear that we should be doing this or that this afternoon.
You appreciate the lack of stimulation here?
I like the lack of stimulation. We get facts, not stimulation here.
How can you stay away from Wall Street?
Well, if I were on Wall Street, I'd probably be a lot poorer at... you get overstimulated in Wall Street, and you hear lots of things, and you may shorten your focus, and a short focus is not conducive to long profits. And here I can just focus on what businesses are worth, and I don't need to be in Washington to figure out what the Washington Post newspaper is worth, and I don't need to be in New York to figure out what some other company is worth. It's simply an intellectual process. And the less static there is in that intellectual process, really the better off you are.
What is the intellectual process?
The intellectual process is defining your level, defining your area of competence in valuing businesses, and then within that area of competence, finding whatever sells at the cheapest price in relation to value. And there are all kinds of things I'm not competent to value. But there are a few that I am competent to value.
Have you ever bought a technology company?
No, I really haven't.
In 30 years of investing, not one?
I haven't understood any of them.
So you haven't ever owned, for example, IBM?
Never owned IBM. Marvelous company. I mean, a sensational company, but I haven't owned IBM.
And so here is this technological revolution going on, and you're not going to be a participant.
Gone right past me.
Is that all right with you?
It's okay with me. I don't have to make money in every game. I mean, I don't know what cocoa beans are going to do. There are all kinds of things I don't know about. And that may be too bad, but, why should I know all about them? I haven't worked that hard on it. In the securities business, you literally every day have thousands of the major American corporations offered you at a price that changes daily. And you don't have to make any decisions. You have to make, nothing is forced upon you. So there are no called strikes in the business. The pitcher just stands there and throws balls at you. And if you're playing real baseball and it's between the knees and the shoulders, you either swing or you got a strike called on you. If you get too many called on you, you're out. In the securities business, you sit there and they throw U.S. Steel at 25 and they throw General Motors at 68, and you don't have to swing at any of them. They may be wonderful pitches to swing at, but if you don't know enough, you don't have to swing. And you can sit there and watch thousands of pitches, and finally you get one right there where you want it, something that you understand, and then you swing. And
so you might not swing for 6 months.
You might not swing for 2 years.
Isn't that boring?
It would bore most people, and certainly boredom is a problem with most professional money managers. If they try to sit out an inning or two, not only do they get somewhat antsy, but their clients will start yelling, "Swing, you bum!" from the stands, and that's very tough for people to do.
Warren, your approach seems so simple. Why doesn't everybody do it?
Well, I think partly because it is so simple. That the academics, for example, focus on all kinds of variables. Partly because
by academics you mean professors of finance?
The data is there.
In business school?
Sure, and the data is there. So they focus on whether if you buy stocks on Tuesday and sell them on Friday, you're better off, or if you buy them in election years and sell them in other years, you're better off, or if you buy small companies. There are all these variables because the data are there, and they've learned how to manipulate data. And as a friend of mine says, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And once you have these skills, you just are dying to utilize them in some way, but they aren't important. If I were being asked to participate in a business opportunity, would it make any difference to me whether I bought it on a Tuesday or a Saturday or an election year or something? It's not what a businessman thinks about in buying businesses. So why think about it when buying stocks?
Thing to do, and you're not going to pick the bottom, and nobody else can pick it for you or anything of the sort. You've got to be prepared to, when you buy a stock, to have it go down 50% or more and be comfortable with it as long as you're comfortable with the holding. There have been 3 times in Berkshire's history when the price of Berkshire stock went down 50%. There wasn't anything wrong with Berkshire when those 3 times occurred, but if you're going to look at the price of the stock and think that you have to act because it's doing this or that, or somebody else tells you, well, how can you stay with that when something else is going up or anything? You've got to be in the right psychological position. And frankly, some people are not really careful. Some people are more subject to fear than others. It's like the virus. It strikes some people with much greater ferocity than others. And fear is, some people can handle it psychologically. If you can't handle it psychologically, then you really shouldn't own stocks because you're going to buy and sell them for a long time. And you should not count on somebody else telling you this. You should do something you understand yourself. If you don't understand it yourself, you're going to be affected by the next person you talk to. And so you should, and I don't know whether today is a great day to buy stocks. I know it will work out over 20 or 30 years. I don't know whether it'll work out over 2 years at all. I have no idea whether you'll be. I'm not recommending that people buy stocks today or tomorrow or next week or next month. I think it all depends on
In my life, to give another example, the Mungers would have twice the assets they now have if I hadn't made one mistake of omission back in the 1970s. And really stupid. And I blew an opportunity that would have doubled my present net worth. That is a normal life. You get 1 or 2. And how things work out, it's the basis. We all know people that are out married, their spouses are so much better. Think what a good decision that was for them. And what a lucky decision, way more important than money. And a lot of them did it when they were young, they stumbled into it. Now, you don't have to stumble into it. You can be very careful. A lot of people are wearing signs, danger, danger, do not touch, and people just charge right ahead. That's a mistake. Well, you can laugh, but it's still a horrible mistake. And It's been fun for the people on this board to know one another and work on these oddball things and to handle life's vicissitudes. Of course, it's very peculiar that we're so old. I mean, imagine a place where Gary Wilcox is one of the young men. And the guy's wife is still a golf champion, but that's not because she's good when she's old. I mean, yeah, it's an amazing group, and that's an interesting example too. Imagine being as old and as impaired as I am and having a pretty good time. How does that happen? That is another story. I can tell a couple of other stories too, because you like stories. Here's an apocryphal story that is very instructive. A young man comes to visit Mozart, and he says, Mozart, he says, I want to write symphonies. And Mozart says, how old are you? And the man says, I'm 23. And Mozart says, you're too young to write symphonies. And he says, but Mozart, he says, you were writing symphonies when you were 10 years old. And Mozart says, yes, but I wasn't asking other people how to do it. Now there's another Mozart story. Here's the greatest musical talent maybe that ever lived. And what was his life like? Well, he was bitterly unhappy and he died young. That's the life of Mozart. What the hell did Mozart do to screw it up? To make himself, well, he did two things that are guaranteed to create a lot of misery. He overspent his income scrupulously. That's number one. That is really stupid. And the other thing was he was full of jealousies and resentments. If you'll overspend your income and be full of jealousy and resentments, you can have a lousy, unhappy life and die young. All you've got to do is learn from Mozart. You can also learn from that young man who was asking Mozart how to write symphony. The truth of the matter is that not everybody can learn everything. Some people are way the hell better. And of course, no matter how hard you try, there's always some guy that achieves more. Some guy or gal. And my answer is, so what? Does any of us need to be the very top of the whole world? It's ridiculous. And another thing that people do that I regard as amazing is they build these enormous mausoleums. I think they figure they want people to walk by that mausoleum and say, gosh, I wish I were in there. Anyway, you can see we've had some fun as we go along, and it's worked so well, but if you actually figure out how many decisions were made in the history of the Daily Journal Corporation or the history of Berkshire Hathaway, it wasn't very many per year that were meaningful. It's a game of being there all the time and recognizing the rare opportunity when it comes and recognizing that a normal human allotment is to not have very many. Now, there's a very confident bunch of people who sell securities who act as though they've got an endless supply of wonderful opportunities. Well, those people are the equivalent of the racetrack tout. They're not even respectable. It's not a good way to live your life, to pretend to know a lot of stuff you don't know and pretend to furnish you a lot of opportunities you're not furnishing. And my advice to you is avoid those people. But not if you're running a stock brokerage firm. You need them. But it's not the right way to make money. And this business of controlling the costs and living simply, and that was the secret. How much money? Warren and I had tiny little bits of money. We always underspent our incomes, and we invested, and if you live long enough, you end up rich. It's not very complicated. And now there is a part of life which is, how do you scramble out of your mistakes without them costing too much? And we've done some of that too. And if you look at Berkshire Hathaway, think of its founding businesses: a doomed department store, a doomed New England textile company, and a doomed trading stamp company. Out of that came Berkshire Hathaway. Now, we handled those losing hands pretty well when we bought into them very cheaply. But of course, the success came from changing our ways and getting into the better businesses. And it isn't that we were so good at doing things that were difficult. We were good at avoiding things that were difficult, finding things that are easy. By the way, when we bought the Daily Journal, that was easy. And what we're doing now in this software business is difficult. But due to the accident of these good associations and the fact that these old colleagues have lived so long, we're doing pretty well in the new business. It has potential. And it's fun to do. And how many declining newspapers have hundreds of millions of marketable securities lying around and a new business with some promise? We're like the last of the Mohegans.
It's for Jerry.
Oh, he's giving it to somebody important. Well, I'll take some questions now.